Hello, good morning, Scotland. Good afternoon, Malawi. My name's David Hope-Jones, the Chief Executive of the Scotland-Malawi Partnership, and welcome to today's digital event discussing understanding the impact of the devalued Kwacha. I'll perhaps just say a little bit of introduction, and then I promise I'm going to shut up and we're listening to far more interesting people about this really important question. But while I'm doing it, please do use the chat box. Networking is one of the most important things in our events, whether they're digital or in person. So please use the chat box to introduce yourself, say a little bit about yourself. And through the course of the meeting, do use direct messaging through the chat box to connect and network and share your details. But some perhaps introduction before we get started briefly from me. As probably everyone knows on this call, on the 27th of May this year, the Federal Reserve Bank of Malawi announced a return to market-determined foreign exchange rate regime to support the dwindling foreign currency reserves. In short, they ran out of forex. The move came in reaction to rising commodity prices, which have hit Malawi hard, and amid declining revenue from tobacco, its major export. Essentially, what this economic decision from the government of Malawi did was to devalue the Kwacha by the dollar against the dollar by around 25%. And that has some short-term, medium-term and longer-term implications. And I suppose a few months later, what we're keen to do is just have a bit of space, a bit of time this morning to really help understand where Malawi is at the moment. Specifically for me, there's three main aims that I want to get out of today's discussion. The first is to understand the contemporary context in Malawi. Where is Malawi right now as far as the human and economic implications of the devaluation, combined with other cost of living pressures, inflation, the Ukraine war, and other things, many of which Scotland and the UK is really suffering with as well. The second is I suppose to listen to some analysis about how the situation might evolve from here into the medium and longer term. Now, I know if you put sort of 10 economists in a room, you'll probably get 10 very different answers to the question of what's going to happen next. So I'm certainly not going to be giving any economic forecasts myself, but there are some really serious things to think about, particularly in terms of food security. We all know that how important the sort of seasonal cycles in Malawi and affordability of farm inputs is a really important consideration at this time of year. And the third thing is to be able to offer insight and advice for our members in Scotland on how best to work in partnership and friendship and solidarity with their partners in this evolving context of increased cost of living pressures. They're probably most on the call, looking at the many friendly names I know very well, are very familiar with the Scotland-Malawi relationship and the role of the Scotland-Malawi Partnership and our sister network in Malawi, the Malawi-Scotland Partnership. But I know we do have a few new voices and new participants today who I enthusiastically welcome. And for them, just very briefly, we, the Scotland-Malawi Partnership, are the national network in Scotland. We coordinate, represent and support Scotland's great many civic links with Malawi. We have around 1,400 members representing 109,000 Scots working with Malawi. But equally impressive, perhaps more inspiring, is our sister network, the flip side of the coin, the Malawi-Scotland Partnership, or abbreviated to MASP, who I'm sure we'll hear from through our discussions today. And they do all of the coordinating at the Malawi side. So really, this is an opportunity to be able to listen, primarily to Malawian voices about the context in Malawi to help inform those in Scotland working with Malawi. As I've already said, do use the chat box to introduce yourselves. I can see that popping up already. The way we're going to achieve those three strategic objectives is I've got 6 speakers who I've approached, and they've very kindly offered to give their perspectives to this question. What are the human and economic impacts of the devaluation? So we're going to listen to sort of 6 pre-agreed speakers, no very formal agendas, but I ask speakers maybe to keep sort of 5 or 6 minutes or so. And then, while they're speaking, please do put questions in the chat box for any of our speakers. Helpful if you can say who your speaker who your question is for, and as speakers, if you can make sure your name is correctly featured in Zoom, that would be really useful. So you can ask questions through the chat box, but then there's going to be open space for you to share your experience. We're keen not just to listen to the sort of economists, but really the practitioners and the communities on the ground. So I really encourage you to think about your own thoughts or reflections, so you can either respond to any of our speakers to ask them questions, but also to offer your perspectives, advice. And I'll do a quick wrap up at the end, and hopefully we'll capture some really useful nuggets to take forwards. Let me just check how we are with our speakers. I know, can I check first off whether Mr. Misheck Esau, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name. Let me see whether we have. Wonderful. Yes, I can see. Super. Great. Well, I'm really thrilled to introduce a very senior first guest, first speaker to speak for perhaps 6 minutes, sharing his perspective. It's Mr. Misheck Esau, former CEO of CDH Bank, one of the very, very big banks in Malawi, and former president of the Bankers Association of Malawi. So I'm really delighted to pass over to Mr. Esau, who will offer a banker's perspective on the current context. Over to you, Misheck, if you can hear me.
Thank you very much, David, and good afternoon all. I hope I can be heard. As the introduction has been made, the intention is not to delve into serious economics and analysis that people do in boardrooms. I think the focus from the introduction that I've seen is that we should focus on the implications of some of the policy decisions that were made on people's lives. I think that's more important for this forum. So to use the 5 minutes that have been given, this is how I'll go. As a matter of background, so Malawi as a country has been experimenting a semi-floated exchange rate for some time. And the consequences have been quite varied, and in part has fueled some development in the parallel market that I'll discuss just now. While this is happening, the country export base has always been insufficient to meet the ever-growing import bill. Officially, the balance or the gap between imports and exports is in excess of $700 million. And sometimes you wonder, how does this get filled? Because in certain cases, we still have shops full of some imported luxuries, and yet we have a balance of payments position that is negative and hugely negative. And as aware as well, import substitution has also been very slow due to a number of factors, including low agricultural production, the low manufacturing base, and other factors that are quite well known for those people that have visited the country. And exports from agriculture as well are mostly done informally, and for a number of reasons, including some export controls and banks not being able to really finance agriculture, and therefore exports from that sector are done outside the normal channels to be able to capture the exchange rate, the currency that comes in. Now, to the discussion, we all know that world production and supply systems have been greatly disrupted by the COVID-19 pandemic, and the Ukraine war recently, and specific to Malawi, we also had a cyclone Anna that disrupted production systems in the last rainy season. Then we also have had generally low production and have been import dependent, and most of the countries such as Malawi have been caught on the wrong side of these global events such as COVID-19 and the Ukraine war. One of the aftermaths of the May 2022 devaluation of the exchange rate by the Reserve Bank of Malawi is that it has really brought in quite a number of challenges. And one of the challenges is really the scarcity of foreign exchange to be able to meet essential items. And it's very clear that the government is struggling to really make sense out of the developments around the exchange rate and the currency in general. Now, some of the consequences at the macro level, just to summarize. So inflation prices have gone up and have increased. The prices of fuel have gone up. And inflation generally has increased from around 12% at the end of 2021 to about 25% now. And that's a huge jump, almost double. Prices have effectively doubled in most of the essential goods such as fuel and fertilizer. And most economists agree that, when inflation goes up, you have to try to manage demand by raising interest rates. So interest rates have been increased to the extent that while the financial sector was making strides to increase access to credit for most SMEs, rising interest rates as a measure to control rising inflation have come in to disrupt one of those key tools for economic recovery. My view was that SMEs were getting a lot more credit than in the past. But with these rising interest rates could disrupt that momentum that was created. Now, Reserve Bank, contrary to its wishes when they devalued the currency, they thought they would curtail the parallel trade. But the devaluation of the currency appeared not to have been sufficient to kill the flourishing currency market, where the exchange rate is as much as 15% higher than in the official market. And this is a problem because it means that whatever Reserve Bank tried to do to bring normality in the currency market, it has not worked through that devaluation. So that devaluation really has not benefited the general population. In fact, for as long as there's this gap, it means we have a long way to bridge the foreign currency situation. So the consequences at the lower levels of the economy are, some of them are increasing food costs, necessarily mean that there could be more malnutrition. The country is not completely food secure. So high food prices mean a lot of problems with nutrition at household level, with its various consequences on the general well-being of ordinary Malawians. And that is really unfortunate because we thought as a country we were heading towards food security, and therefore we shouldn't be worrying about the nutrition. But it looks like with these food shortages, high costs of food, we could go back some years of malnutrition, particularly with children. And the high interest rates could mean that there will be difficulties, and the high input costs could mean that there will be difficulties to access fertilizers. So fertilizers have also jumped. Me, as a farmer, so I'm not an ordinary farmer, but as a farmer, I'm having to think twice. How will I afford a price of fertilizer that has doubled in price? And that alone will mean a lot to an economy that was trying to get its agriculture back to what it was in the 70s and 80s. And unless a solution is found around fertilizers, there will be real problems to production. Then from the banking perspective, when interest rates are very high, normally banks and financial institutions will tighten credit. So access to credit will be seriously undermined because banks fear defaults when interest rates are climbing the way they are doing. And so the economy is also said, another consequence at micro level, the economy is also said to be predominantly informal. Most of the good part of the economy, maybe as much as 62%, is actually informal and mostly based on SMEs. Now, when if clear interventions are not put in place, the economy will take longer to recover because most of those SMEs that were recovering will struggle. And this could mean loss of jobs. Most of the jobs that are being created in this economy, in the Malawi economy now, are being created by SMEs. Now, if serious developments like this really affect those SMEs, then we have a problem with job creation. So in a nutshell, some of the solutions could be that although necessarily borrowing when interest rates are going up is not normally a good thing, but unfortunately for me, I believe that increasing access to credit, maybe ways must be found to make it a lot cheaper, so that SMEs that are productive should still have access, should still have access finance to be able to prop up their businesses that are otherwise struggling. Because I think what the economy should focus on now is to help those SMEs that are productive, that can produce items that substitute imports, or indeed those SMEs that actually can help export, generate exports. There's also the dimension that export restrictions and rules really affect what the country gets from its production. For the economy to generate new cash, we need goods that are produced here to go out. But most agriculture exports, products, face rules and bans that, in my view, do not make sense. There must be a way in which government can open up a bit, because some of the items are really privately produced, but there are blanket bans that affect exports to the extent that whatever is exported informally, and the foreign exchange does not come to Malawi in the way it should. And Reserve Bank, as the monetary policy around the currency, has to look at the rules again, because it looks like, as I said, they hope that one move of devaluing the currency by 25% will sort out everything. But they have introduced quite a number of rules now around the conversion of foreign currency, to the extent that I think the generators of foreign exchange are saying, why should I generate foreign exchange and convert it at a rate that is not market reflective? And this is a problem. As I traveled to West Africa, sitting with Malawians in their diaspora, and they were saying, no, for me, my hard-earned currency outside Malawi as a diasporian, I will not convert it in the formal market, because it does not make sense. And somebody says, over the past 12 months, I've lost like an equivalent of $15,000 because I was converting through the banks. Some of these rules do not make sense, and they have to be made to make sense for the economy to start shifting. Because one of the fears one has is that there must be a way of introducing more confidence in the system, so that the ordinary people that we actually are trying to protect do not continue to suffer. I think in a nutshell, that's what I can say in 5 minutes. I'm sure I've even gone beyond 5 minutes. Thank you, David. And you all.
Mr. Esau, that was absolutely brilliant. That was incredibly useful, very, very insightful, and exactly what we were after. I was frantically scribbling notes and got at least two pages there. So a very sincere thank you very much, and it's wonderful to have you with us on this call. Thank you very much. I'm going to turn to our next speaker, if I may, but again, encourage you to, if you haven't already, to introduce yourself in the chat box, but also use the chat box to ask questions of any of our speakers. There will be time to be able to do so verbally, but get your question in now, and please, speakers, please feel free to respond to questions in the chat box. I wonder if I could turn now to Marie Brown, who's the Chief Executive Officer of African Vision Malawi, one of our members. And I know Marie also has her Finance Officer as there as well. Marie, if you can hear me, over to you.
Thank you very much, David. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
That's excellent. Okay. Difficult to follow Misheck, to be honest, in terms of his very comprehensive presentation. So thank you for that, Misheck. And obviously, I am no economist or finance person, but really, I would just like to present from our point of view a more lived experience of what we are experiencing as an organisation in terms of our staff, in terms of our programmes, and commodities as well. So I think Misheck and David have already provided us with a context and background to the devaluation of the Kwacha. And in response to that, a number of NGOs here, a number of international NGOs have done a cost analysis across their organisations to look at cost of living adjustments for their staff. And in line with that, we also did the same as well. And we'll just highlight a couple of the key sort of commodity rises that we've noticed really since April up until now that have had quite considerable impact on staff and programmes and general cost of living. So things that are extremely important in Malawi, as you know, cultural ceremonies and funerals in particular are very important ceremonies in Malawi. And since April, we've seen a 144% rise in the making of coffins as a result of wood. We've seen increased rises by 96% of salt. Tomatoes have increased by 100% since April. And as Misheck confirmed as well, the price of fuel has also risen by 139% since April and is likely to well. What we know also anecdotally from staff and from people living here is that landlords have adjusted their rentals. There's been a variation in price in terms of how that has been adjusted. I think some people are taking advantage of the devaluation, and we are seeing increased rises of anything between 25 and 75% in terms of rental prices here amongst our staff, for example. Additionally, when we collaborated with some other NGOs on their cost of living review and analysis, we were able to establish that some NGOs have requested cost of living adjustments of 35%, some as low as 17%, and in a number of cases, most of the recommendations that they proposed have been accepted. I think we have noticed in the government sector, the salary rise has been 12%, with most either private or charity-based sectors increasing their salary adjustment between 15 and 30%. Anecdotally from staff, and just by living here, there is definitely a sense of insecurity. People are feeling extremely worried, and not only worried about job security, but worried about their safety, and worried about their future going forward. We have had some anecdotal reports of petty crime increasing, more opportunistic theft. We have some of our staff who use public transport are concerned about moving after work and going back to their homes at night because of theft as well. We've generally seen, for a number of reasons and not just this particular situation, but I would say more hostility, more demonstrations, general kind of, insecurity within the population here. People just generally feeling very uncertain about how the future is going. From our own staff point of view, staff have reported an increase in accessing loans, either through ourselves or trying to access loans through banks in order to compensate for the impact on salaries. And yeah, I think those would be the kind of key areas that I would mention at the moment. I don't know if my colleague Eric would know. He doesn't want to add anything. But I think that's just a brief overview from our point of view. In response to that, as an organisation, we have done a cost of living adjustment in response to the devaluation of 25%. And we have also heard, and I'm sure Misheck will confirm, that there is likely to be a further devaluation in October as well.
Marie, thank you
Hello.
very much. Hello.
Oh, sorry.
That was absolutely wonderful. Thank you. Sorry, I was fumbling for my unmute button. Thank you so much, Marie. That was absolutely wonderful. One final bit of information. I might have missed it. Could you just tell us where you're speaking from in Malawi, as that might be a useful information? Yeah,
we're speaking from Lilongwe. Our office is based in Njewa, in Lilongwe. So, and we operate in the rural northwest. Lilongwe, which is just behind the airport.
Fantastic. That's all incredibly useful and exactly what we were after, really understanding what the implications on people on the ground are and organizations working in Malawi. I was at this point going to turn to a good friend of ours, Dr. Matthews Mutabuka, CEO of Ubuntu Net Alliance and Managing Director of Helios Towers in Malawi. You talked about cultural practices, and actually Matthew has to send his apologies today. He has a family funeral that he has to drive a parent to. So he sends his very sincere apologies, but is keen to feed into this conversation after the event. I'm really thrilled now to turn to Beatrice Kabota, again, another great friend of the Scotland-Malawi relationship. Beatrice is the Cervical Cancer Prevention Programme Manager in Nkhoma CCAP Hospital. So Beatrice, if you can hear me, over to you.
Yes, David, I can hear you. Are you able to hear me?
We can, and we can see you as well. Wonderful to see you, Beatrice. Over to you.
Thank you so much. For me, I think I don't have much because my colleague have already said what is happening in Malawi. But the impact which we can say which has come with the devaluation, it has really resulted into general increase of commodities across, and especially the fuel cost that we are using when we are trying to implement the project, because we are dealing with the community and we have to travel to find them, and the time we are doing sensitization. So this has really impacted, because it's like the cost which we used to do, which we used before devaluation, it has doubled. So this has really affected the project, and also even the community is safe when we are meeting them. Most of them, they are always complaining about how life is hard to them. So in terms of when we are opening like new sites for screening, we need also to do some renovation if that room needs to be done, so that we create a good working environment. So procurement, like for the building material for innovation, is quite high, as well as when we are buying even the equipment now to conduct the screening itself, it has really gone up. So this has really affected in almost all our project activities, but also when we are going out to these activities, there's some staff costs which we provide for them to take care when they are away from home. So this also has affected. But despite this, the beauty thing is, despite that, what we give them, it cannot really give them the modest care when they are out from home. Our providers continue providing, since we know that we are saving a lot of mothers from what we are doing. So they are continuing providing the service despite the challenges. And from maybe what we can ask from our partners is if they can consider if they can help us in any way, how we can cope up with the challenges which has come with the devaluation, and also maybe revision of the project budget lines because they are fixed. Sometimes it's not easy just to manipulate of them. So how best they can help us in that. But also for the future funding, maybe there will be allowance that maybe year after year or after 2 years, there should be some review of these budget lines. I think that's what I can try to bring forth into this discussion. Thank you so much, David.
Beatrice, thank you very much indeed. Particularly useful to have those really practical points at the end, those recommendations of what we can be doing. And I'm going to come back to those, if I may, at the end of the meeting. Thank you very much, Beatrice in Nkhoma CCAP Hospital. I'd like to turn now to Alan Laverock, known by many of us, probably two hats. Well, there's a number of hats that Alan wears, but two in particular that he helped set up and runs Banana Box Trust, which I'm sure he'll tell you about. But he's also the Scotland-Malawi Partnership's own finance officer. So, Alan, over to you. Thank you.
Thanks. When I was in Mzuzu last month, that should come out the airport and turn left. My man there, Ben, came to me and was very proud that he'd bought bananas at the same price as the last time I was there 6 months ago. And I had to say to him, but Ben, there's only 2/3 as many bananas. And that's the local variation of I don't care how much they put fuel up, I just put £20 in anyway. The Malawian reaction, as far as I can see, the Malawian reaction to the devaluation has been verging on panic. I think that's partly due to a lack of understanding. When you're my age, you will remember when we devalued the pound in the 60s, and we're talking about the pound in your pocket having the same value. On Facebook, people have been posting that your 100 Kwacha note will only be worth 75, which is obviously untrue, but people have been accepting that. And that's created price increases. One of the previous speakers was saying that tomatoes have gone up 100% in price, and there really is no reason for that other than people increasing prices on the back of it. Foreign goods, yes, these should go up because they're imported and they're priced in dollars, but local goods really ought not to have gone up, but they have done. Bananas have gone up hugely and tomatoes have gone up hugely. Of course, Malawi is not immune to the geopolitical factors that are affecting the UK at the moment. And our inflation is 10%, likely to go up to 18%, they're predicting. And that underlying thing also affects Malawi, but they also now have this 25% overlaid on top of it. So that's those factors are still in play, and they'll increase things like fuel, and they'll create shortages of food and fertilizer because a lot of these come from the Ukraine. So these factors are still in play. When I was there last month, there were a number of very striking increases in prices. Bread, for example, has gone up threefold in 6 months. Petrol, I've been going to Malawi since 2008, and petrol always worked out at £1.05 when you translated it back. It's now at the same price as you would pay here for it in Malawi, so that's a huge increase. Cooking oil is about double. That's a basic thing for Malawians, is about double. The price of maize is going up hugely, partly due to a poor harvest and partly due to just people increasing prices generally. And I think the big one is fertilizer. About 3 or 4 years ago, before the pandemic, fertilizer was something like 18,000 and it's now something like 75,000. So it's gone up fourfold and it's predicted to go up even more. So that could be a fivefold increase in 4 or 5 years in the price of fertilizer, which is basic for what Malawians tend to do. Many Malawians are reacting, I think, by increasing their prices. Price of accommodation, for example, has gone up 50%, so it's actually more in pound terms than it was 6 months ago. And people are increasing that. Things like eating out, which is, I know it's a Western thing, but that's costing substantially more, even in pound terms, than it was 6 months ago. So the effect of the devaluation, the beneficial effect of the devaluation for people like ourselves has actually been negated by price rises. Maybe prices needed to be adjusted, that's possible, but that certainly has been the case. Now, I'm not an economist, so my prognosis might actually be right. I think inflation, which is currently, food inflation in Malawi is 31%. Overall inflation is about 23%, and non-food inflation is about 16%. So inflation, I think, will lead to a further devaluation, whether that's by floating the Kwacha or whether it's a specific devaluation, but I think that has to happen. And that's partly due to the price increases. And I think that needs to be handled by the Malawian authorities in a more sensitive manner than has happened last time, because if we just increase the panic again, then prices will go up again, and that potentially can lead to hyperinflation, as has happened in other countries, and hopefully not. I think fuel shortages, there will be fuel shortages, and that will lead to continued price hikes in everything, because everything has to be transported around the country. It will lead to costs going up. As an aside, in this country, when there is high inflation, we all go on strike, and this is not a threat, David. we all go on strike and demand higher wages, and you know, our wages go up so that we can afford to pay some of the increased prices. Malawians don't have that benefit because many of them, most of them, are not working. So a price increase, something like fuel, just genuinely prices Malawians out of that market. So when I first went there 14, 15 years ago, fuel, I remember, was 262. The Kwacha was 250 to the pound, and it was 262 for fuel. It's now 2,000. And that's an 8 times increase, a genuine increase for Malawians, because they have no income. Therefore, fuel just costs 8 times what it cost 10 or 12 years ago. I think fertilizer, this has already been mentioned, but I think the fertilizer increases because most Malawians are growing their own food, and that's how they survive. The fertilizer increase will price smallholders out of that market, and that will inevitably lead to food insecurity, I think, in February, March or April next year. I think that's inevitable. Very sad, but I think that's what's going to happen. Just to sum all that up, inflation in this country is devastating. In the UK, inflation is absolutely devastating. Where there is little income, it's soul destroying for Malawians. And I think there could be big problems. Somebody, I think it was Marie, mentioned that there had been an increase in petty crime, and I can see that happening already. And the country really needs to, somehow or other, to stabilise itself. It needs very positive messages from the government to reassure people as to how they go for the future. So I don't have a good prognosis for Malawi, I'm afraid, over the next year or two, until this all gets sorted out. So that's it, David. Thanks.
Alan, thank you very, very much indeed. And I think Alan's, forward-looking reflections there, and again, it's always a brave man that does that, I think are very stark and very sobering, and I think exactly where we wanted this conversation to take us, to be able to look forwards to this next growing season and really think about it, and think now about what support, encouragement, and solidarity would really be useful. I know John Kapito, who many of you will know, a very prominent name in Malawi, the Executive Director of the Consumer Association of Malawi, is very keen to join the conversation. I haven't yet seen John, but we do have a few people with unidentified names. So John Kapito, if you're there, please do jump in should you wish to. Just unmute and say hello.
Hi, David.
Fantastic! You're with us, John.
This is John. Yeah, I sent
Really?
in. I sent in a small message on the app, but I think maybe it didn't come out right. I'm here.
So sorry, I missed that. You're hiding under the pseudonym iPhone today, but we're really thrilled to have you with us, John. As I said, many will know John, a real expert on exactly what we're talking about. And John, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, David, and good afternoon to everybody. We are all in Malawi. I want to start by saying that I think I've followed much of what my friends have been talking about regarding the challenges that we are facing in Malawi as a result of devaluation and other pressures in the economy. It's quite devastating indeed. And as a consumer organization, I think we have been following the trends over the past 2 years as well, right from the period that we had that election, then to COVID, then we went into the serious challenges of the Ukraine and the Russian war, now the devaluation. All these put together have had a huge impact on the Malawi economy. And as Esau said it earlier on, Malawi is a net importer, and being a net importer, the devaluation, including some of those other pressures that we made, the pandemics and the rest, really have devastated every sector of the economy. I speak for consumers, and what we do every day is to go out on the market and look at the trends, the movement of prices, and the behaviors of Malawians. And we collect that data and put it in various boxes for interpretation and analysis. But what I think we have noted lately that I think after the devaluation, what government has said about the devaluation, that they keep on saying that it was a necessary evil. I don't share that, because really there was no need for us to devalue at that particular moment, when we know very well the definition or the reasons behind why we need to devalue. And academically, people would say that there's one key one, is just to improve on your exports. And we happen to have no exports as well, is to have more earnings on your exports. And what this has done to the Malawi economy by devaluing the Kwacha, coupled with the rest of the challenges that we were carrying on from the COVID and then from the Russian-Ukrainian war, we have seen prices of goods going up substantially. And this has also been a challenge. We have also seen a challenge on the cost of fuel, which has triggered also prices of goods on the market to go up. Like on average, we have noted, for example, food items have gone up by a margin. We collect the food items in baskets. So we have seen that basket going up by about 119% over the past 6 months. And when we look at just the non-food items that include soaps and the other items, those have gone up by substantially 88%. Now, for an economy, like Malawi, sorry, there was that echo. For an economy like Malawi, where most of our people are basically unemployed, it becomes a challenge to see that movement of money, that people, having disposable incomes to go out and buy the most basic goods and services. And this has really put a lot of pressure on the market, to where we are now experiencing even closure of some companies, because people do not have money, and therefore they are unable to sell whatever they have in their shops. But worse still, because most of the companies are unable to get access to forex to import as a net importer, as I said earlier on, you find that most shops are beginning to get empty. And as they get empty, some are trying to close. The more they close, the more people are also losing jobs in a country where unemployment is already high. I do get a lot of questions when I go out and in my office, where people are asking me, what is it that you think government can do? I am saying there is nothing that government can do at the moment. Given that now we are negotiating another IMF program, and that IMF program is the one that triggered the 25% devaluation, and rumors are that we could be getting another one. Then there's the speculation. The speculation aspect alone has kicked us hard because now everybody is preparing for the next devaluation, and therefore prices have started to move up incrementally, which is also creating more challenges to the already impoverished, poor Malawians. And as I said earlier on, what would happen is that right now the government relies on taxes from us consumers. When we go buying goods, when we do businesses, small scale businesses, the government collects taxes. But because the market now is also shrinking, we have noted that government is also unable to raise money on its own. And then what has happened is that the government is overcrowding the market in terms of the banks. It is the one that has become the biggest borrower from the banks, and therefore making it difficult for the ordinary people that are carrying out businesses or ordinary Malawians to go and borrow money from the banks. And that crowding of the banks has also made interest rates to go up, and then access to disposable incomes really to become zero. And this is ongoing as I am talking right now. Prices of maize have just doubled to a figure that no Malawian can afford now to buy a 50 kg bag of maize. And what does that mean? It means malnutrition. Now, issues of nutrition are things that we have been discussing for a long time. Once we are hit by nutrition, then we also create challenges in our hospital systems. You find that we do not have drugs. There are a lot of people that are sick. And that also creates a lot of challenges to already poor economy like ours. But as we are moving towards maybe closer to the peak period now, peak period in Malawi starts in October, where I'm talking about maize. That's when maize prices become a bit more steeper, become more expensive. Then that period, we are going to see also huge challenges on the market, where the majority of Malawians, most of them have been unemployed, and access to cash is so hard to think about and even to imagine. Therefore, that period, we are expecting that there will be more challenges that I think are going to be hard to address given the environment in which we are operating from. So the current situation in Malawi is, yes, devaluation, we needed it. But what was that devaluation for? Then the answer is that there was none. And what has devaluation done to the economy of Malawi? It has made Malawi to go back 10 years backwards. And it will take us a long, long time to get back again on the main road and begin to get this economy back and into a system where it can start to grow. Now, the growth of this economy right now has also been reduced to low numbers. And I doubt whether those numbers are also going to be achievable given the environment we are working from. So it will be difficult for the ordinary person that I speak for. The ordinary Malawian right now, I know most of the people on this platform right now are Malawians, and they know it, and I can see it even on their faces, that the current situation is so devastating that we need immediately to begin to have a dialogue, to have discussions on how quickly can we get back to where we were. Yes, I'm aware we do not have dollars on the market, but we need to find a way on which we can begin to start thinking long term. How then do we get the economy back on the road in order to address this? Is devaluation an answer to the current challenges that we have? Is borrowing money from the IMF and World Bank an answer to the current challenges that we have? If we are honest with ourselves, I think our answers will be no IMF, no World Bank, no devaluation. Then what next? Therefore, we need to sit down and define the what not next. If we do not do that, unfortunately, everybody in the country is so quiet. Everybody is not speaking about the economy. We are just hoping something is going to happen. And that miracle is somebody has it. And I don't know who has got that miracle. Unfortunately, if we keep quiet for too long, the more we are going to make the lives of ordinary Malawians even worse. And I am praying right now that the current situation on the market, we just visited the market 2 weeks ago, both rural and urban. And what we are getting from those markets are so bad to hear. And the news that is coming out is that even the people that are selling goods in the rural markets are unable to sell their goods because the people do not have disposable incomes. And that definitely needs a quick answer. I am pessimistic, and I am hoping that a miracle is going to happen. I don't know from where, but if another devaluation is going to come, I'm sorry, that will be it. I don't want to say what will come out of it, but I think people should understand from the language I'm using. I am a bit more worried with the direction on how our policymakers are trying to address the current situation right now by staying quiet, by staying cool, by remaining distant from the challenges that we are facing. I think personally, I would recommend us to have good dialogue, good discussions quickly, and find a way on how we can address the challenges that the ordinary people are facing right now. Most of the hospitals don't have drugs because we do not have money to import good drugs. Right now, I'm worried. I'm to meet the Minister of Agriculture and discuss, do we need to import what is called the agriculture farm inputs, like fertilizer and the rest, in a time when we do not have dollars? Is it something that we can avoid this particular year in order just to save something that is that we do not have? Because we will not be saving any dollars, but we will be saving what we do not have. But by saving, by not bringing in the farm input products or subsidies, then we would be able to at least caution and make sure that we are only able to use like currency or dollars that we have. And I hope that I think this government is going to listen, because right now it's not about politics anymore. The economic situation is in dire stress, and we need to deal with this issue that we have at the hand. So, David, just to summarize, Malawi is in a serious challenge. We need a national conversation. We need to discuss the challenge that we are facing. This is not one-man show. It cannot be done by only the president or his ministers. I think all of us have got to take a role and make sure that we are able to gather and share ideas on how best we can get out of this challenge that we are in at the moment. Thank you, David.
Mr. John Kapito, thank you so much. What energy, what passion, what insight, and as you said, representing the ordinary person in Malawi in powerful and in forceful ways. And I know you've been doing that for a long time, and we don't take it for granted to be able to have your voice and your views and tap into that passion in this call. And I think that what you are calling for, of having that conversation, of raising awareness of it, of stopping a sense of waiting for the miracle, I think is very much what this space is all about. So thank you very much, Mr. Kapito, for your time. I want to turn now to Lindsey Barkham, if I may, the supported care coordinator of Open Arms Malawi. And perhaps, Lindsey, if you could introduce, say a little bit about Open Arms, including where you're based at the moment. And I've been really interested in social media and in some of what you've said on this theme recently. So, Lindsey, if you're with us, over to you.
Yes, I'm here. Hello, David and everybody. Right, Open Arms Malawi provides transition homes for many abandoned and underprivileged babies and children in Malawi. We are not an orphanage per se at all. So some of our babies are orphaned, but we usually try to return them to their extended families in Malawi, in their villages. But I do have a particular case study which shows that there is hope, at least for one family, in the end of March, there were twin baby boys born, Prince and Promise, and within about 5 days, their mother died, which is not uncommon. The cause was unknown, and the father is a fisherman on Lake Malawi, and so with the help of his sisters, was able to buy formula milk for them, and they were able to feed the babies, keep them alive. And then the cost of the formula milk increased hugely by about 30%. And the father knew that he couldn't afford it anymore. However, they did know about Open Arms, so they brought the babies to us. So what we do from fundraising in the UK, I'm in Harrogate in England, and what we do, we fundraise and send grants over every month, and we can then make sure that these babies have the milk, the medical care, the love, the shelter, everything that they need to thrive and grow. And then once they're about 2 years old and can walk and talk and feed themselves solids with nsema and vegetables and things like that, we then reintegrate them back into their families, so that and the father still visits them at the infant homes. It's, you know, where we encourage that ongoing relationship and the bond, and then they will go home. But once they go home, when they are older, we don't just leave them to it. Excuse me, we do keep a regular eye on them, and with our successful outreach program, which is great, and we make sure that the children are thriving and that they are able to go to nursery school, and that there is enough food. And if there isn't, then we do have the means to provide either some monetary help or some food, and that goes a long way to help these families. Where children on occasions are actually abandoned, with the help of the social care and maybe the local police, it is sometimes possible to track down the extended family, even if, say, the mother has just abandoned the baby, or we don't know what has happened exactly. But often there are aunts, older siblings, cousins, who can and are happy to look. Grandparents are a huge part of looking after some of these disadvantaged children, and some of them look after several children. So we're there to support them with advice and help should they need it. And that's kind of it in a nutshell. Obviously there's a lot more to it than that. Please feel free to contact me. We have lots of information, lots more case studies, but it's lovely when we can send these children home and see how they grow and progress over the years. It's lovely.
Lindsey, thank you very much indeed. And of course, you know, purchasing formula milk and things like that, you know, as the costs are going up, is having a real impact, I know. I want to now, if I may, turn to our sister network, the Malawi-Scotland Partnership. I know Linda Dembo is there, and I'm keen to invite any input that Linda or anyone else from MASP wishes to make. I'm then going to pass to Ashlin Matthew to say a little bit about the research. And then really throw it open. So please do, if you want to make a contribution verbally, please do put up your digital hand. If you can't figure out how to do that, turn your camera on and give me a wave, and hopefully I will see you and I'll turn to you a little bit later. But Linda, I wonder if I could turn to you now for your input from the MASP side, our sister network.
Yeah, thanks, David. I'm here, and I'm sorry, I'm not going to put my camera on because of my bandwidth is below. So I'm really following keenly, and I'm appreciative of all the speakers that have spoken before. I just want to add that, yeah, indeed, the devaluation has really had a big impact on us Malawians, especially that it comes soon after we had been hit hard with COVID-19, which brought in a big challenge. And when people were just about to recover from the impact of COVID-19, and then they were hit with the devaluation, the 25% devaluation. And the sad thing is that from the devaluation, what I see is that there's no really a cushion that we can actually see from the government side. For instance, I'll give the example, and I'm sure that the example that Alan gave was actually very clear on the bananas. So like, for instance, you're getting 100,000 as your monthly salary, or that's your income for a month. This devaluation, that means that you are losing 25,000 of the money that you were making. And with the loss of that 25,000, it means that now you have to cope, because you still are getting the same amount of money, but then you have to still survive losing the 25,000 that was with you before the devaluation. And then there's no really that cushion, that how do you cushion yourself to make do with the money that you earn to survive. So I think the question that that is in my mind is about, you know, what capital investments can we have? What can we really do so that we can stabilize the situation, so that we can still cope in spite or despite the devaluation that is there. And I'm really afraid, hearing from the speakers, if we are going to face another devaluation, how are we going to cope? Because that means that you're going to lose another percentage of your income. Thank you.
Linda, thank you very much indeed. I think you've spelt out very clearly and very powerfully what this looks and feels like on the ground in Malawi. And to your question, you know, what capital investment can be made to stabilize, you know, value all views and input to that question. I want to turn just briefly, if I may, to Ashlin Matthew, who's very helpfully messaged me to say, done a piece of research. Ashlin, if you're there, I wonder if I could turn to you.
Hi, David. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm doing a literature review on the currency devaluation in Malawi. And basically, I just looked at the 2022 devaluation in May and compared it to the 2012 one. And I have to say that the similarities there are many similarities. It's basically pretty much the same situation all over again. And I have to agree with what Mr. Kapito had earlier said about wanting a miracle, because honestly, at this point, I don't know what we're going to do if we're going to have another devaluation, because the current 25% devaluation has pretty much ruined the country. It's had a drastic impact on everyone and everything, not just economic factors, but even social factors. For example, these days, security is becoming such a big deal. Back in 2012, we had similar problems. In 2012, after the currency devaluation, there was a lot of thieves, and there were a lot of problems related to that. And security was such a big deal. But over the last 5-6 years, that's been stable, and people have been okay, and everything's been going well. However, recently, in the last 2-3 months, that's become such a big problem. For example, my family right now, we've had to install alarms and get extra security because it's just becoming too scary. And we can't really blame the Malawians for doing this, even though it's immoral and wrong to steal. But they're at that point of desperation where they have no other choice but to steal. That's the situation the country is currently in, and it's honestly terrifying. I don't think we're going to be able to withstand another 25% devaluation. I think that's really going to ruin the country, and people will literally starve to death. So I don't know. I think, like Mr. Kapito had earlier mentioned, we do need a miracle, and we need to figure out a long-term way to get out of this. I don't think relying constantly on the IMF and asking for loans and constantly borrowing money is our solution. I was reading the book Bad Aid by Dambizo Moyo, and like she mentioned, aid is not the solution in the long run. I think it's definitely useful, and given the problems that we are in right now, it's definitely useful. But I think due to how much it's been misused, it's not a long-term solution. And I'm hoping for things completely changed in Malawi. I'd left to study at the University of Edinburgh. The change in prices in the last 9 months have been drastic. Each time I go to ShopRite is our main shopping complex. Each time I go, I'm confused by how high the price has gone. Everything has just doubled, and people are unable to afford basic goods. For example, bread is like 1,300 Kwacha now, and that is about what someone would earn on a daily basis. That's the minimum wage. So yeah, it's a very, very upsetting situation, and I've grown up in Malawi, so it makes me really, really sad to see where the country is going. I'm really hoping things will turn up though, but I think it will definitely take some time. Thank you for listening.
Ashlin, thank you very much indeed. And if you are happy to send across your research, your analysis to me, that would be fantastic. And we will link it to the past event page, which will have the video from today and the notes. Please, friends, there's been a really good and vibrant conversation on the chat box. My encouragement that you continue to use that. My thanks to the speakers who have been answering questions there. Please do put up your hand digitally or turn your video on to wave if you would like to make a contribution or ask a question. But my suggestion is that I give some I suppose closing reflections now, including some recommendations on what perhaps we could do as a community. I think it's really important while creating a space to share and to listen to the stark and rightly sobering reflections that are here. It's very important that we don't become fatalistic. What we need to do is to begin to think, what can we as a community of actors do, of 109,000 Scots working with Malawi? And I do so with all humility and self-awareness. These are macroeconomic issues, many of which are global rather than local or regional. So I'm not pretending for a moment that we as a community can fix or necessarily change the underwriting issues, but that it's not nothing is the important point I want to make. And I suppose the other point I want to make is recognize there are real economic challenges in the UK as well, and many of the issues that have been identified post-COVID, the Ukraine war, rising cost of energy, the UK is feeling too. But I think there's a really important point that we're probably all agreed on, and I think each of the speakers has recognized that there is just a qualitative and quantitative difference between the UK and Malawi as far as the starting point, and hence the inherent vulnerability to these economic changes. I was just looking up some numbers. The GNI per capita, so how much money is being made per person per day in Malawi is currently £1.31, and that figure is £82 in Scotland at present, and that's a materially different base to address these similar economic challenges, when 75% of Malawians are subsistence farmers. As Laverock said, if the price of fertilizer increases fivefold, it is a binary. It's the difference between being able to afford it or not being able to afford it, and that will have real and immediate food security implications. But what can we do as a community? The first thing I think is continuing to do what we're doing now, which is to share information and to listen to the voices on the ground. So what I will do is look to pull out, in addition to the videos and the detail, a really snappy one-page briefing for our members on this as an issue, registering the I think very credible threat of a further devaluation, but listening to Mr. Kapito, not unhelpfully speculating in ways that actually could drive the economy further down. So the first thing I think we can do is to just better share information and to keep sharing that information and to look forwards. The second thing, I want to come back to something that Beatrice said, and that's the Cervical Cancer Screening Programme does get a grant has had a grant from the Scottish Government. And I think there's a useful role that we can do advocating on behalf of our members and their partners to the Scottish Government, to the UK Government and other funders as to the seriousness of this issue, and to really advocate for significantly enhanced flexibility in the budgeting. We can't rely on a budget that was written 3 years ago when all of this has changed so dramatically, as we've heard from all of our speakers. So that's the second thing I think we can do, have that conversation with funders, represent those voices that we've heard today, and making sure that there is understanding and flexibility from grant givers. Third, the point that was made by a couple of people about access to credit, is there more that we can do there? And I'm not going to give specific recommendations there, but just really to register that I think there's perhaps something that we can do there, supporting whether it's through credit unions. We had the head of a very prominent credit union across in Scotland last month, and I think there maybe is more that we could do in using the bilateral relationship and its levers to support credit unions in Malawi. Third, boosting economic growth. Our first speaker today was really powerful on the underwriting cause, is the balance of payment, the trade deficit that's there. And there are some opportunities here. We, with others, helped establish the Malawi UK Business Group 4 or 5 years ago. And I don't think it's confidential, I can say, but full details forthcoming. But we're now in the final stages of converting that into a formal UK Malawi Chamber of Commerce. There's 3 new attaches in the Malawi High Commission focused on trade, investment and tourism, who we're having good conversations with. I met last week with the Scotland office, the UK government's representatives in Scotland, talking specifically about what support the UK government could give to UK Malawi trade to try and alleviate some of the blockers and the frictions that are there post Brexit. And we've got very good lines directly to the Minister of Labour, Honourable Vera Kamtakula, and the Minister of Finance, Honourable Sostin Gwengwe. So when you add all of that together, it's not nothing. And I think that there is good leverage and good opportunities that we've got. There's also 3 Scottish MPs that are going out to Malawi next month, and they'll be looking at nutrition amongst other things. And I think if we act strategically, if we box clever, if we really tie up all of these opportunities, there are things that we can do to help drive high value exports from Malawi to the UK and other markets to try and make some modest contribution to that fundamental and underlying balance of payment. And the final thing we can do, we're developing a relationship with a new money transfer service called Moto Money, which will make it much, much easier for people in Scotland and the UK to be able to transfer in one, very simple maneuver online or on an app, a few clicks on your phone, to potentially hundreds of people in Malawi. So far more frictionless cash transfers. We talked a little bit about this in our meeting, I think it was last week, on digital inclusion, but further details to come about that. So we do have a good money transfer partner, and I hope some of the technological improvements there will assist with some of these issues. So there's some of the things that we can do: support information, keeping in touch, sharing information, raising awareness. Secondly, advocating with funders amongst those who currently hold grants. Thirdly, looking at the credit unions, if there's anything we can do on there. Fourthly, trying to use the levers that we've got to build UK Malawi trade to be able to increase particularly higher value exports out of Malawi, to reduce the reliance on the diminishing tobacco exports. And finally, looking at the mechanisms and technologies around cash transfers to be able to support. I think there's 5 things that we could potentially do, but I want to throw it open specifically to that question: what else could we do as a community? And if anyone has any thoughts or input or reflections on any of those ideas that I've suggested, or anything you disagree with there, or any other ideas of what we can do, please put up your digital hand or just unmute and jump in now.
Hi, is it okay if I jump in for a sec?
Please go ahead.
Oh, awesome. I was just discussing with Alan, just a speculative conversation, but the potential for tourism in Malawi. I've never visited Malawi, so bear in mind this comes from my perspective, but the potential for tourism is immense, with the natural beauty of the country, the relative security compared to other sub-Saharan African countries. I think as Scottish-based NGOs, this is something that we can push in our communications, as well as the kind of primary goals. For example, if it's a nutrition-based organization, that can be the primary goal, but it's always worth having that as a separate message on the side, that people should visit Malawi. People can have a great time in Malawi. There's amazing things for people to see and do. I think that could be a really strong sector that's currently being kind of perhaps underdeveloped or underused. Thank you.
Yusuf, thank you very much indeed. Absolutely. Tourism, I've added that as a 6th strand. Again, tourism, new attaché in Malawi High Commission, and really good conversations there. We've got good links in with tourism partners. There is an ongoing discussion and a balance that probably all of us are having to make between how much do we do digital, how much do we do long distance traveling, looking at the, especially post COP26, some of the responsibilities there about the climate crisis and long distance travel, but absolutely driving tourism, and particularly high value tourism, is a real priority for us. And I think there's good opportunities for that upcoming. So I think that's an excellent idea, and I've added that to that. I wonder if I could turn to Eno next, and apologies if I'm not pronouncing that right, but I can see a hand from Eno.
Yeah, David, don't worry, you got that right. It's short for innocent. I work with Orbis, Orbis DMC in Malawi, and I want to first of all agree with the last speaker that tourism is what I wanted to suggest. He took that right out of my mind. I think that tourism is a low-hanging fruit as it stands, and especially with the crisis we're going through in Malawi, it's something we can capitalize on to, first of all, address the issues to do with balance of payments, because this is an easy export. We're exporting a service. So by deliberately investing into tourism and removing bottlenecks that currently exists in as far as tourism is concerned, I think we will maximize Forex that goes into the official channels, unlike the parallel markets. Recently, I have seen that happening with the Reserve Bank of Malawi. They have been calling all tour operators in the country, trying to bring them in line, get them to have licenses to handle foreign currency. But I think more has to be done in a wider scale, including small things like reducing visa fees or making Malawi visa more accessible than it is. I will throw in an example between Malawi and Zambia. Currently, the Malawi visa is really hard to get in the way you apply for it. There's so much that is being asked for people to submit to apply for the visa, whereas you can just walk over to the border in Zambia, you pay half of what you pay in Malawi, and you get it within 15 minutes. So I think these are things that will make Malawi more attractive, and we will have more Forex that will help the ailing economy. Secondly, on the same issues of Forex, I think there are loopholes. These are now things to do with legal instruments in the way we regulate foreign currency in Malawi. We have quite a number of foreign nationals that come to Malawi in the name of investment. They will own a tourism business in Malawi, and yet they will operate bank accounts offshore. So maybe in Mauritius or somewhere else. So all the foreign currency that should be realized by the efforts and service being given in Malawi is externalized. And I think until these are arrested in courts, we will see a lot of Forex coming in. And I think the official word for this is called Forex leakages. So yes, I want to underline tourism as something that we can easily and immediately start to enhance. There was someone who was saying they have never been to Malawi. I agree with you. I actually envy you that you haven't been to Malawi, because it's something you should do very soon. So yes, David, that's my input. I think tourism as a low-hanging fruit, and also we should try to close the loopholes that are leading to foreign currency leakages.
Innocent, thank you very much indeed. Absolutely, and great to hear from one of our closest members and travel partners, Orbis Expeditions and Responsible Safari Company. I think that point's absolutely been registered, and there's more that we can do into that space for all the reasons that you've articulated. And coming back to this question about capital flight is a huge challenge. I mean, when you fly out to Malawi, you're sort of asked, have you got any Kwacha, and you might have sort of scraps of Kwacha, and that's where the focus is. Whereas in reality, as you said, that the issue is really at scale and quite different to that. Friends, that's an hour and 20 minutes, and I think I'm going to begin to draw it to a close. As we were talking about last week, Malawi has one of the most expensive connectivity rates anywhere in the world, with an average of about $25 per gigabyte of connectivity. So for that reason, we really do try and keep our meetings short. I know there's a lot more that could have been said, but if anyone has any final points they really want to make, please do put up your digital hand, and I'll endeavor to come to you. But if not, perhaps Craig, if you could put up the poll, the feedback poll, which is really important, that should pop up in your screen just in a moment. A couple of very, very quick questions, which it would be great to have your feedback on. There it is. Thanks ever so much, Craig. So if anyone wants to make any final comments, please do put a digital hand up. And otherwise, just to inform you, if you go into our website and you click past events, there's for every single thing the Scotland Malawi Partnership does, there's a dedicated web page. We put the video there, we put notes there, we put updates. So if anyone sends us anything, that's where we put it. So keep looking at that. We're going to save the chat box and put a link to the text of the chat box in the event. But if you've had any private messages from anyone, that's not saved by us, and we won't publish it. So before you go, do save any contact details or useful information that you've got from any private exchanges in the chat box, because I know some people have found that frustrating in the past. But I'd just like to end by saying thank you so much to all of our speakers. We've heard from some of the real leaders in the field in Malawi, the people who are giving up their time and energy to really champion these issues. We don't take your time or the money that you've put in to be able to connect for granted. So thank you very much to all of our speakers, and thanks for taking part. And let's really be driven by those 6 things that we can do as a community going forwards. Thank you very much indeed, Nkhoma. Have a great day.